Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, there's a lot of you. Yeah, all making a difference, too. That's amazing. My name's Brandon Getz, and I work for Plymouth Housing Group, providing low-income, permanent supportive housing to the chronically homeless. I'm a live-in building manager at Plymouth Place Apartments. That's at the bottom of First and Denny, and we house there 70 single adults, providing homes for them, as well as 3 live-in staff. And when I'm not meeting with tenants, I'm approving timesheets, coding invoices, responding to emails, doing supply orders, making sure everyone's paid rent, scheduling vendors, doing unit inspections, unit turns, light maintenance, lease signings, meeting with my staff, and pretty much whatever's necessary to keep the building running smoothly. And while all that's of course necessary, what I love is working with the tenants. That's where we really get to see the magic. And I know we all have different roles in this mission, and if yours doesn't give you the opportunity to be face-to-face with those we serve, seek those opportunities out. There's nothing like witnessing the gratitude in someone for something as simple as just being handed a plate of food at a community meal, or getting to see somebody's joy when we get to show them their apartment, their new home, and give them keys and say, "Welcome home." And one of my favorites is getting to watch somebody find their voice at one of our monthly open mic nights when they're either reading a poem they wrote or singing a song. There's nothing like it. And so we try to do as many community events as we can so that we can create spaces where we all step out of our roles for a bit and out of the normal dynamics, and we're just people enjoying each other's company. It's a place where tenants can feel part of something, part of a community. And I think it's easy for a lot of us to take that sense of community for granted, the fact that we have family and we have loved ones that care about us. For a lot of the people we serve, we're it. We're the people to show them the world hasn't given up. And so we're constantly working to try to connect, to try to reach them. And when we do, we have to celebrate that. Whether it be getting somebody off the street who's been homeless for years, or just getting somebody to simply smile for the first time since we've been working with them. We have to hold on to these victories, because that's what feeds our hope. And that hope, in turn, continues to fuel our motivation in this mission. And also because when people see us full of hope, it's contagious. They find that hope in themselves. One of my favorite tenants, and I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but we can keep that between us, right? Cool. This is a woman who really drove me crazy for the months after she moved in, which was the apartment right beside mine. Within a week, she managed to flood her entire unit and mine. And then her idea of taking the trash out was sitting it beside my door. I'd get knocks on the door at all hours from her asking for anything from a cigarette to a cup of sugar. But every now and then, I'd get a knock and answer it pretty frustrated, and she'd be like, "I'm going to the food bank. Do you want anything?" And so, but it was actually starting to get to me, and I was struggling with how frustrated I was becoming. And I remember one day thinking, what must have happened? What must have happened to her? And I remember I didn't know her story, but just taking the time to consider what she must have been through, all of that frustration disappeared, and all that was left was empathy. We've all experienced trauma in our lives, and some much more than others. And they carry those wounds for the rest of their lives. One day she overdosed, and the medics had been there a while working on her, and they eventually took her out. And I remember looking at her and realizing that was the last time I was ever going to see her again. And she remained unresponsive in the hospital for the next week. And then here she comes, walking in the front door of St. Charles, and she's got one of those hospital gowns, you know, the kind that doesn't quite cover everything up. And like she doesn't have a care in the world. She just looks at me and starts laughing. And I that was when I realized how much knowing her had affected me. And and so she ended up moving to the building that I work in now, where she likes to introduce me to all her friends and guests as her son, which we all get a kick out of. And over the years, I've gotten to know her story and what she's been through. And some of it I think you can imagine, but some is truly unthinkable, what she's experienced. It's funny where you sometimes find your teachers. And she taught me the meaning of trauma-informed care and what that looks like. And she regularly reminds me not to take myself too seriously and to practice gratitude for every day we have and to find joy in the little things and to just laugh. And her laugh is completely contagious. And I'm happy to say she's doing really well these days. She's living proof of the resiliency of the human spirit. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how I found myself at Plymouth Housing Group and why, if people that know me ask, I'm usually going to respond, living the dream. So I moved out west after resigning to the fact that my heroin addiction was going to kill me. And so I was just trying to get as far away from my family as I could because it was killing them to watch it. I stayed with a friend that I knew from back east for about a week, and then we had a falling out. And so I remember he took me to the University District and dropped me off on the Ave. And so I'm standing there with my bags, and that was when I realized I had nowhere to go. I was homeless. I slept in an abandoned car for a while, and eventually it was towed, and then it was shelters, it was couches sometimes if I was lucky, the streets, and then eventually ended up in jail for petty theft. And that cycle continued for the next 5 years. And during that time, I really came to know what hopelessness was, what shame and being invisible really looked like. And what I'm happy to say was my last stay at the Gray Bar Hotel, otherwise known as King County Jail, something happened. I woke up. I decided I was done, and I actually was. And so when I got out, I did something different. I was clean. I still couldn't find housing, but I was fortunate enough to find somebody to let me pay him to stay on their couch. And I got into school, and I was doing really well. And I ended up running into that same guy that let me stay with him for the first week in Seattle, and he was in school too, and he was working for Plymouth Housing. And some time went by, and we stayed in touch, and one day he called me and said, they're hiring, you should apply. And I did, and to my surprise, they gave me a chance. They gave me a job. Yeah. And they did that despite me having no work experience in that field, aside from, I guess, what you could call years of field research. And that was 9 years ago this month. And as it turned out, that field research was quite helpful in this job. And I suddenly found strength and hope from a time in my life that had no meaning to me. It just seemed a complete waste. The first building I worked in, the St. Charles, had a jail diversion program that I'd actually applied for when I was homeless. So I could have been a tenant in that very building I found myself working in. I realized I was right where I was supposed to be. And when I think about that statement, it means I always was. Even at the worst of times, it was all necessary for me to be right where I am today, the person I am today. This work saves lives, and it's saved mine in so many ways. And I'm continually blown away by the people I'm surrounded by that do this work and how much you all care. You all choose to be of service to others instead of to just yourselves. And what's great is we're hardwired to be that way. And so once we find ourselves in this work of service and we see the benefits to everyone involved, of course we stay. So thank you. Thank you all for everything you do to make this a better place. And I can't wait to see what we all accomplish when we continue to work together. We're all family. We're all one big family, and we have to take care of that family. And when we do that, we all win. When we do that, maybe at some point, when we ask anyone in our community, how are you? They may also say, living the dream. Thank you.